You sit down to rest, finally, after a long week. Nothing to do, nowhere to be, and within minutes, something creeps in. Not relaxation, guilt. You should be doing something. You should be productive. Why does resting feel like breaking a rule you never agreed to? Here's the strange part. That guilt isn't really about laziness. It isn't a personal failing. It's the echo of a survival system that once had a very good reason to keep you moving, and understanding where it came from changes everything about how you rest. To find the root of this feeling, you have to go back further than childhood, further than culture, further than any single belief you were taught. You have to go back to a time when doing nothing was, quite literally, a matter of life and death. Imagine an early human on the open savanna, tens of thousands of years ago. Resources were never guaranteed. Every hour spent motionless was an hour not spent gathering food, building shelter, watching for predators, or preparing for tomorrow. Idle time wasn't peaceful, it was risky. Evolutionary biologists have long noted that humans evolved under conditions of scarcity, where energy not spent on survival tasks could mean the difference between making it through winter and not. A brain wired to feel uneasy during stillness had an advantage. That unease pushed our ancestors back into motion, back toward the next useful task, before danger or hunger had the chance to catch up. In other words, the discomfort you feel when you're doing nothing isn't a glitch. It's an ancient alarm system quietly whispering, don't just sit there, do something. But here's where the story gets more complicated, because this is only about ancient survival. It's also deeply shaped by something far more recent and far more cultural. Sociologist Max Weber, writing in the early 20th century, described something he called the Protestant work ethic. The idea that hard work and productivity became tied not just to survival, but to moral worth. Weber argued that in certain religious and cultural traditions, working diligently was seen as evidence of good character, even a sign of favor in the eyes of God. Idleness, by contrast, wasn't just unproductive. It was treated as a moral failure. That idea didn't stay confined to religion. It seeped into culture broadly, into the language people use every day. Think about how naturally phrases like, make the most of your time or don't waste the day roll off the tongue. Rest, under this framework, has to be earned. You deserve to relax only after you've proven your worth through output. So now you're carrying two forces at once: an ancient biological unease with stillness, and a cultural belief system that turns rest into something you have to justify. Psychologist Christopher Berglund, among many researchers studying rest and stress, has pointed out that chronic busyness activates the same physiological stress response your body uses for actual danger. Your nervous system doesn't fully distinguish between behind on emails and there's a predator nearby. Cortisol rises either way, which means constant productivity, far from being purely virtuous, can quietly keep your body in a low-grade state of alarm. Here's the twist. That very state, being chronically busy and slightly stressed, can start to feel like your baseline, like calm. Meanwhile, actual rest, actual stillness can feel foreign, even uncomfortable, precisely because it's unfamiliar to a nervous system trained to expect constant low-level threat. This explains something many people notice but rarely question. You finally get a free afternoon, and instead of relief, you feel restless, almost itchy. Some part of you searches for a task, any task, just to feel normal again. Researcher John Robinson, who has spent decades studying how Americans use their time, found that even when people report having significant leisure time available, many still describe feeling time poor, perpetually behind, and their subjective sense of a rushed life often shows almost no relationship to how much free time they actually have. In other words, it is really about the hours in your day. It's about how deeply the belief runs that those hours must be filled. So what does this mean for you, sitting there right now, maybe feeling exactly this discomfort as you read? It means the guilt isn't a signal that you're doing something wrong. It's a signal that two very old systems, one biological, one cultural, are colliding inside you. One evolved to keep your ancestors moving, one was built to convince you that stillness needs to be earned. Neither of those systems was designed with your well being specifically in mind. They were designed to keep a species reproducing, and later, to keep a workforce productive. Neither was built to help you personally feel okay on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Understanding this doesn't make the guilt disappear instantly, but it does something almost as useful. It gives the feeling a name, a history, an explanation that has nothing to do with your character. You're not lazy, you're not broken. You're standing at the intersection of an ancient alarm system and a relatively recent set of cultural rules, both trying, in their outdated way, to keep you useful. So the next time you sit down to rest and that familiar unease creeps in, you might recognize it for what it actually is. Not evidence that you should be doing something, just an old voice, shaped by scarcity and shaped by culture, that never got the memo that it's allowed to be quiet now. You sit down to rest finally after a long week. And this time, when the guilt creeps in, you know exactly whose voice that is. And you know it isn't yours.